I am joined by the documentary filmmaker Charlie Minn, whose story about Flyers legend Pelle Lindbergh will be hitting theaters on November 7th around the area. And I'm very excited for this conversation. And Charlie, we've been texting a bit, and I've been able to check out your website, check out the trailer. The film looks excellent. You must be very proud of your work.
It's been a very exhausting effort, Bill. This is a very deep and emotional story, a landmark anniversary coming up, so it's critical to get the story right.
Absolutely, it's a thing people around here know very well. Flyers fans, even maybe some who weren't around for it to actually happen, know very much the story of Pelle Lindbergh. But just trying to read up on you a bit, Charlie. Checking out your IMDb page, looking up some bios, the types of films you've made in the past. What inspired you to do this? Because it feels like a little bit of a departure from a lot of the things, a lot of the films you've made previously.
Yeah, most of my other films, you're right, Bill, deal with true crime. And this is actually my second movie in Philadelphia. I did one about the Kensington crisis, all the fentanyl on Kensington Avenue a couple of years ago. That movie's on Amazon Prime called Kensington. So, yeah, this is a bit of a departure. This is about sports. And I used to be a sports journalist and huge hockey fan. Remember watching Pelle Lindbergh play live at the old Nassau Coliseum growing up on Long Island, watching all the Stanley Cups the Islanders won. And I saw Pelle Lindbergh in the 1983 All-Star game. Unfortunately, when Wayne Gretzky lit him up for 4 goals in one period, no less, Pelle would get his revenge 2 years later in his second All-Star game appearance, winning that game. But again, watching Pelle play live at the Nassau Coliseum a couple of times. I was a goalie growing up. I wasn't very tall, just like Pelle, so he was a goalie that I really studied and was very interested in.
Now, it seems like you got a lot of input on this. I saw on your website, special thanks to Bill Meltzer, but it looks like you also may have had one of the very final appearances on camera for another Flyers legend who passed recently. It was Bernie Parent. I've had the chance to meet Bernie several times. I've interviewed him a few times, most recently in June at the draft. It was so great to get to hear from him again. But what was it like working with Bernie? Because he is, I realize the subject matter, a downer, but Bernie is the greatest.
One of the nicest human beings I ever came across. He didn't know me from Adam, and the way he talked to me, looked at me, because the eyes never lie. Just a warm individual, and he really gives hope for humanity in a world today filled with hate and negativity. Bernie Parent was just a top flight, first class guy. And I mean, what can you say? He'll live in Flyer fans' memories forever. A legend, 2 Stanley Cups, and like Pelle Lindbergh, he was a better person off the ice than on the ice. So that's saying a lot.
So with the and Bernie was able to coach a bit as Pelly's goalie coach. So obviously they had a relationship, and that could be some insight in this film that maybe, a little something we didn't know, because that wasn't something I was even aware of, that Bernie was actually a goalie coach for a little bit. Now you seem pretty familiar with the story, like you said. You grew up watching the Islanders in Long Island. Of course, Flyers met them in a Cup final. One of the premier teams of the 80s were the Flyers. But was there something about this story other than just, hey, you like goalies, you saw him play in an all-star game, that really drew you to Pelle Lindbergh and the tragedy that was the end of his life?
Well, Bill, the tagline in the movie is the goalie, the man, the decision. So this is a clean sweep of Pelle Lindbergh, his career, and what happened that morning. And I think a lot of Flyer fans to this day, especially the older ones who follow the history of the franchise, who certainly remember Pelle Lindbergh because of what he did. I think a lot of fans, even Flyer fans, only know that okay, he was drinking too much, he got into a car and he crashed it, and that's that. Well, this film will really get into the when, where, why, how, and everything else in between. It's a real detailed look, a deep dive into that fateful morning, and it's such a sad story because it could have easily been avoided. We have a lot of familiar faces in the film. Rick Tocchet, your current head coach, is front and center in this documentary. He was with Pelle that morning. So Murray Craven also played a big part, that a big role. We also have Brian Propp, Mark Howe, Dave Brown, Bob Rose. So if you're a Flyer fan, this is your movie in every which way.
Yeah, it absolutely sounds like it, and obviously it would be a lot better if we could watch a story of the '80s Flyers that wasn't, centered around a tragic accident. But it feels like so much of the '80s Flyers history is a little bit lost, and just getting some of that story, because we all know about the '70s, the Broad Street Bullies. It was 15 years before I was born, and I know about these teams. But the '80s, right there, it just kind of seems like this. They were an almost team, and you don't quite get the same legendary tales about them. So it's shedding light on an era of Flyers hockey that, even though it's closer to my fandom, I'm not as familiar with. So I am interested in catching that as well. I gotta believe, since you have such a background in a lot of true crime stories, that you maybe uncovered some things in this film that a lot of us aren't familiar with. Is there any one thing you can share with us that might shock some of us to know about that, or just a little tidbit that, wasn't aware of this with Pelle Lindbergh?
Pelle Lindbergh was not an avid drinker whatsoever. He was not even supposed to go out that night because his mom was visiting from Sweden. And when he decided to go out, he told his family, "I'll be back in an hour or two." Well, unfortunately, that turned into 3 hours, and then 4 hours, and then 5 hours. And there's no cell phones back in 1985, so it wasn't like you could look for the guy. He went to Bennigan's, and then he went to the Coliseum where the Flyers used to practice. And then the night just got more later. It went into the wee hours of the morning, and we actually found the two crash survivors, and they're interviewed in the documentary.
Oh,
So
wow.
when I tell you this is a deep dive, I am not kidding whatsoever. Kathleen McNeil and Eddie Parvin Jr. were the two passengers inside Pelly's car, and they're miracle survivors because, Bill, if you look at the car, his red Porsche, it was mangled. How anyone survived that is a miracle, and 2 out of the 3 survived it. Unfortunately, Pelle did not. So, again, we're gonna go into a very deep analysis of what happened that morning and why Pelle died.
It sounds like this is absolutely a deep dive into the accident and the life of Pelle Lindbergh. How long did it take you to make this film, beginning to end, from conception through the through what will be the release in about a month in some area theaters?
Well, let's see. We started filming, I believe it was in February of this year, and I'll never forget,
Oh,
Sean Burke, a former Flyer, is a friend of
yep.
mine, and I needed a hotel room to shoot at, and Vegas was playing the Devils, and he said, "Hey," he gave me his key. He goes, "Just here, use my room." So we did the first few interviews in there with Dave Brown, Chico Resch, a former Flyer who actually was traded to the Flyers and basically replaced Kelly Lindbergh because
Yeah.
The Flyers needed a goalie. So we interviewed. Those were the first couple of interviews we did, and so here we are. We're almost into November now. So we started in February. I knew the 40-year anniversary was coming up, a landmark anniversary. And Bill Meltzer, you mentioned his name earlier, was a huge help. Nobody knows more about the Flyers than Bill Meltzer. That guy is truly amazing, uh,
He's incredible.
and a better human being, I might add. I had a chance meeting with Bill at Wells Fargo a few years ago, and we stayed in touch. And finally, this story came around, and I said, "You know something? Pelle Lindbergh has his story has sort of faded here. Every story fades over time. Let's face it." But I said to myself, as someone who does investigative work, if someone were to ask me, "What do you know about Pelle Lindbergh's crash?" all I would say is he was driving over the legal limit and he crashed his car, and that's it. So I wanted to know more about that morning, where it exactly happened. It occurred in Somerdale, New Jersey. Who was with him in the car? How that entire night and morning became what it was. Coach Keenan had given the Flyers 2 days off because they had just won their 10th game in a row, beating the Bruins on a Saturday night. I believe it was on November the 10th, and November the 9th, excuse me. And so we gave the Flyers the 10th and the 11th off because their next game wasn't until Thursday night, the 14th, against Edmonton, the Stanley Cup champions. So that was another reason why the Flyers were out late, was because they were celebrating a 10-game winning streak and they had a couple of days off.
That is, these are little details that I think will paint a much broader picture of what actually happened leading up to, and like you said, the decision and all of this. What are you hoping to accomplish with this film? What do you hope people take away from watching the SWEDE of Philadelphia?
Yeah, I don't really consider this so much a hockey film, but a film about a human being. I really try to find the human element in all my documentaries. He happened to be a hockey player, but unfortunately, anyone can make a bad decision, a poor decision, and pay for it. So everyone has to think twice about all their actions because you never know the devastating effects it could have later on. So this is certainly a lesson in life. Obviously, don't drink and drive. Don't even take a chance. Back then in the early 80s, mid 80s, it was a different culture. I think more people were drinking and driving. I'm not trying to excuse it or condone it. It's not a good combination. It's lethal. But I think people should walk away saying, you know something, the next time I start drinking, maybe I should think about Pelle Lindbergh and really be careful here. So there's certainly a life lesson to take away from this documentary.
No, absolutely. And given the events of a summer ago, where drinking and driving dramatically affected the NHL world once again. Now, a different set of circumstances. Johnny Gaudreau and his brother were on bikes and were the victims in the circumstance, but it's just another one of these one dumb decision affects so many people that I think it's absolutely a an important message to get out there, Charlie.
Yeah, and the Goudreau incident that happened in South Jersey also.
Yes, yes.
I mean, you can't make this up. Almost 40 years apart, and I hope people will really be moved by two sections in this film. I mean, I want them to be moved by the entire thing, of course, but the Bernie Perron section, the late Bernie Perron, I can't believe I'm saying it like that now, but
It's
Bernie and Pelle, this was a love affair. This was a father and son type of situation. Pelle's idol was Bernie Perron. Pelle wanted to be a Flyer going way back to the 70s when he was playing youth hockey in Sweden, in Stockholm. He would put Flyer stickers on the side of his helmet. He wanted to be drafted by the Flyers. So to be drafted by the Flyers, playing for them, and having Bernie as your mentor, father figure, and coach was almost like a movie script. It was almost too good to be true. Bernie and Pelle would literally tell each other, I love you. I mean, these two were meant to be together. And for them to die 40 years apart from a Saturday night into a Sunday, like Bernie did, like Pelle did, Bernie had one last wish for Pelle. And he says it in the documentary, I'd rather save it for the film. And then people will say, okay, that's what the director was talking about. And I even wrote to the Flyers. And I'll just give you one small hint, Bill. It deals with January the 31st. Keep that in mind. January the 31st.
January the
Yeah, if
31st.
anyone can come up with this connection, I'm giving a little clue, a little hint here.
Hmm.
I think people might go, "Oh, okay, that all makes sense." The Flyers happen to be home that afternoon against the Kings. So why January 31st? Well, when people watch the film, they'll all know what I mean.
Yeah.
And whether the Flyers act upon it, I've already written to them. We'll see. But
I I feel like I may have put the connection together, but people should absolutely check out this film. It is a story of a legendary story and a tragic story of Philadelphia, a legend, Pelle Lindbergh, and this idea of this connection between Bernie and Pelle isn't something I think I really knew that much about, so I'm looking forward to finding out more about that, Charlie. And
yeah,
where I saw November 7th, it's going to be available. I saw the AMC Fashion District in Philly, AMC Voorhees. Where else can people check this out?
And also AMC Cherry Hill. The movie is going to run for at least 1 week at those three AMC theaters. So those theaters, I think, are very accessible. The Voorhees location is actually across the street from where the Flyers practice.
Yeah, it's right there. Yeah.
And one last note about Bernie, and I didn't know this, but Bernie was actually holding Pelle's hand at the hospital when Pelle passed away. So this Bernie Pelle parallel can never be overstated.
That is heartbreaking to find out, but also, man, I want to know more. I want to see this relationship unfold and hear about it from Bernie himself. And it seems like you have a wide range of interview subjects, and I can't believe I really want to see a documentary about, you know, the tragic death of a sports hero in this town, but I do think it's an important story, both from the lesson and from just telling the story of this guy who, yeah, I do believe the legend has faded over time as things do. So thank you for making this, Charlie, and very much looking forward to seeing the film. Where can people find out more?
The website tells you everything. SWEDE of Philadelphia.com. It's a kind of a play off of the song, The Sound of Philadelphia. So this is Swede of Philadelphia.com. Swede, short for Sweden. And yeah, I mean, this will tell you the what, when, where, why, how of that morning of the crash. Just about all the faces you see in the film, you'll recognize. We even got Bobby Taylor, the chief, who used to do games back on Prism with Gene Hart. This will make you think and reminisce, and hopefully you'll laugh and you'll cry in this film. Um, it really is for true Flyer historians who love the 80s back in the day when Mike Keenan was the coach, and you had the Sutters, and you had Murray Craven, and you had Ron Hextall. I mean, this was the decade of the 80s where the Flyers really should have won the Stanley Cup in 80. I've never seen a hockey team get robbed more than the Flyers did in that game 6 when Bobby Nystrom scored that goal. And I was told that that was Ed Snyder's worst moment as owner. I mean, I think he's still angry to this day, even in death. I just think, and he should be fuming because I've never seen robbery like that in my life in 1980.
Charlie, from someone who wasn't born for 8 more years, I have heard about the Leon Stickle game time and time again. So yeah, it's absolutely stuck with the city.
Yeah, that's a corrupt Stanley Cup. That's corrupt 100%.
That's what I like to
Uh,
hear.
yeah, like Kelly Sutherland robbed the Bruins in 2019 when he didn't call that slew foot. So, as someone who I once did a documentary on umpire Joe West, so I have a fascination with umpires and referees, and I mean, there's just so many important calls. I mean, look at the San Diego Padres last week when Xander Bogaerts was called out on that pitch. The umpire was DJ Rayburn. He's a good umpire, but he blew that call, and they should have had an ABS system in place decades ago. But anyway,
Yeah, no, it's listen, I actually I want to check out that Joe West documentary now because he's just one of the all-time ridiculous characters in sports. So, Charlie, I really appreciate you making the time, and I definitely want to check out the SWEDE of Philadelphia. I think many of our viewers and listeners will as well. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for telling one of our stories. We greatly appreciate it when Philadelphia is in the spotlight, when one of our stories gets told, and it might not be the most uplifting events that inspired it, but I do think it's a story worth telling, so thank you for that.
oh, you got it, Bill. Thanks so much.